You're alone, headphones in, maybe the lights are low, but I need you to understand something before we begin. These aren't made-up tale. These are real experiences, told by people who barely live to talk about them. What you're about to hear isn't fiction. It's what happens when ordinary nights take a wrong turn and people meet the kind of fear that scars the soul. Stay close, breathe slow, and whatever you do, don't look behind you. Maya had just moved into her new apartment. She was 27, single, and proud to finally live alone after years of roommates. It wasn't the fanciest place, a one-bedroom on the second floor of a worn-down building, but it was hers. She spent her first night unpacking and setting up, humming along to Spotify with a glass of wine in hand. The place was quiet, oddly so, but she chalked it up to being in an old complex with thick walls. Around 1:15 a.m., Maya turned off the lights and climbed into bed. That's when she heard it. A voice. Very faint, but unmistakable. At first, she thought it was coming from the hallway. Then she realized it was coming from inside her apartment, specifically from the air vent above her bed. It was a man's voice, low and deliberate. She froze, every hair on her arms standing straight. He whispered, "I can see you." Maya leapt out of bed and ran into the living room, heart pounding. She called 911, barely able to explain what she'd heard. The dispatcher stayed on the line as officers were sent over. When they arrived, they found nothing. No sign of forced entry, no one in the vents, no evidence of anyone inside her unit. They told her it was probably just a prank, or maybe her imagination playing tricks on her in a new place. But she knew what she'd heard, and it wasn't over. The next night, it happened again. This time the whisper was longer. "Why did you leave the room?" That night she didn't sleep. She waited by the front door with a knife in her hand. Police came again. Again, nothing, until the third night. When they arrived after another frantic call from Maya, this time they brought a thermal camera. What they found made both officers back away. There was a heat signature in the wall, behind the vent, in the crawl space. They busted it open. Inside was a man, naked, dirty, starving. He had been living between her walls, watching her through the vents, for 3 full weeks. Turns out he was a previous tenant who had never really left. Maya moved out that same night. Liam and his 3 friends, Tom, Nate, and Chris, took a weekend trip to a secluded campground to unplug from their hectic city lives. No phones, no internet, just nature. They found the perfect spot, deep in the woods, miles from the nearest road. They set up tents, started a fire, and drank under the stars. Around midnight, they heard leaves crunching nearby. They figured it was a deer, but then a voice called out from the dark. "You guys got any extra food?" They went. Silent, out from the trees came a man. Late 30s, beard, wearing old, mismatched clothes and no shoes. He looked wrong, like he hadn't seen daylight in a long time. Chris offered him a granola bar. The man took it without saying thanks, then just stood there, staring. Then he asked, "How long are you staying?" Tom replied, "Just the weekend." The man nodded slowly, turned, and walked back into the trees. No flashlight, no noise, just gone. That night, none of them slept well. The next morning, they found footprints circling all their tents. Not animal tracks, barefoot, human. Even weirder, the prints stopped about 10 feet from Liam's tent and started again on the other side, as if the person had levitated over it. They packed up early and left. Weeks later, Tom found a news story online. A local man, missing for over 10 years, believed to be living feral in the woods, attacking campsites. They showed a blurry trail cam photo. Same guy, same face, and the article said he was still at large. Jasmine was 16, home alone on a rainy Friday night while her parents were out of town. She had a simple routine: microwave dinner, binge her favorite show, and scroll on her phone until she passed out. Around 11:45 p.m., the power went out. Just boom, total silence. She checked her phone. Still had service, but her flashlight was weak, 10% battery. The house was pitch black. She walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside slightly to see if the neighbors' lights were also out. That's when she saw it, a figure, standing in her backyard, still, staring straight at her window. The rain blurred the image, but the silhouette was clear. Tall, broad shoulders, head tilted slightly, and unmoving. Jasmine screamed and stumbled back. She ran to grab her phone, but the battery died. When she returned to the window, it was gone. Not just the figure, the footprints in the mud too. Nothing. She locked every door, turned off all lights, and hid in the bathtub with a kitchen knife. She stayed there until morning. The next day she checked the security cam. Exactly 11:45 p.m., the feed glitched. When it came back online, 7 minutes later, there was a frame, just one, of a man's face, pressed against the camera lens. His eyes were wide open, mouth twisted into a grin. No one ever caught him, no explanation, but the footage was real, and she still has it saved, just in case. Ethan was renting the lower half of a split-level house from a couple who lived upstairs. It was a good deal. Quiet neighborhood, clean basement apartment, and cheap rent. But he always had a weird feeling about the back room, the one with the locked door. The owners told him it was just storage, nothing to worry about. Still, sometimes at night he'd hear thumping, like someone dragging heavy furniture across the floor. But above him, everything was silent. The noise was coming from inside the basement. One night, the sound woke him up again. This time, it was different. It was scratching, slow, rhythmic. He got up, followed the noise, and stood in front of the door. Silence. Then, bang. Something slammed against the other side. He jumped back. Then silence again. The next morning he confronted the couple upstairs. They were quiet. Then the woman finally said, "There's something in there we don't talk about," Ethan demanded, to know more. Reluctantly, they told him. The previous tenant was a recluse who sealed himself inside that room. He had a history of mental illness, and one day, he just stopped answering texts. By the time police broke in, he was gone. No body, no trace, just the room, locked from the inside. But the scratching had started soon after. Ethan packed up and left that same day. A month later, a new tenant moved in. She vanished after 3 nights. Derek drove for a rideshare company to pay off his student loans. Late nights were the most profitable. Drunk passengers, quiet roads, generous tips. One Friday around 2:30 a.m., he got a ping. Pickup, rural road on the outskirts of town. Destination, unknown. The rider hadn't entered an address. Weird, but not unheard of. He arrived. No lights, no houses, just trees. Then he saw her, a woman in a black hoodie standing perfectly still at the edge of the road. She got in the back seat without a word. Derek tried to break the silence. "Hey, where are we headed?" She slowly turned her head and said, "Just drive. I'll tell you when." He started driving, mile after mile. No direction, no talking. After 15 minutes, Derek glanced at the rearview mirror. She wasn't there. He slammed the brakes. Turned on the interior light. The back seat was empty. Panicked, he spun around. No one. But the rear door had never opened. His dashcam footage showed her getting in, but never leaving. When he contacted the company, they said no ride was ever logged. They had no record of the pickup, just a blank space. The timestamp, 2:59 a.m., the same time a woman was hit and killed on that very road, exactly 5 years earlier. Brian worked late shifts at a 24-hour gas station off Highway 6. It was boring, quiet. Usually, he had a rule. If someone came to the door after midnight and didn't come inside, he didn't engage. One Thursday, around 1 a.m., he noticed a figure just outside the glass door. They didn't enter, just stood there, not moving. Brian waited. After 5 minutes, he walked toward the entrance to get a better look. It was a man, or at least something that looked like a man. He was tall, wearing a hooded jacket, but his arms seemed wrong, too long, hanging almost to his knees, and his face was hidden in shadow. Brian called out through the glass, "We're open, man. You can come in." Nothing. The figure didn't react. Then it slowly raised its arm and pointed, not at Brian, but at the ceiling camera behind him. Then it smiled, a wide, unnatural grin. Brian stepped back. His heart was pounding, but he tried to keep his cool. He turned away to grab his phone and call security. When he looked back, the figure was gone. Not just out of sight, vanished. No footsteps, no sound. The gravel outside untouched. He rewound the security footage. The camera showed him walking toward the door, then freezing, then backing away. But no one was outside. He was staring at nothing. But Brian knew what he saw. That was his last night on the job. Alina moved into a tiny one-bedroom in an old building downtown, 4th floor, corner unit. She was thrilled until the 3rd night. Around 2:40 a.m., she was woken by screaming, not just yelling, blood-curdling primal screams. It came from the apartment next door. She grabbed her phone and stood by the wall, listening. The screams turned to sobbing, then whispering. She pressed her ear to the wall. The whispering was in another language, harsh, fast, angry. Then, silence. She called the building manager the next morning. He was confused. "There's no one in 4B. It's been vacant for months," she insisted, demanded someone check. The manager unlocked the door. Dust everywhere, empty, no furniture, no signs of life. But on the far wall were scratch marks, long, jagged, bloody lines dragged across the plaster. They filed a police report, but nothing came of it. The next night, it happened again. Same time. Same screams, same whispers. Alina stayed awake until sunrise. That weekend, she left town to visit family, hoping a break would clear her head. While gone, she asked her neighbor on the other side, a guy named Mark, to listen for anything. Strange. Sunday night, 2:45 a.m., she got a text from him. "What the hell is happening in your apartment?" But she was 200 miles away. Mark swore he heard footsteps and screaming coming from her unit. When he knocked on the door, it stopped. Police found nothing, but Alina never returned. She broke her lease, moved out, changed her number, and to this day, no one has rented apartment 4B. If you're still watching this in the dark, you're braver than most. These stories aren't just tales. They happen to real people, just like you. So if you want more terrifying true stories, like the video, share it with someone who needs a scare, and most importantly, subscribe, because the next story might be about you.